Good morning, Emma.
Hi, morning, Justin. How are you?
Yes, fine, and you?
Morning,
Good,
Emma.
thank you. Morning, how are you?
Good and you?
Good, thank you.
Awesome. Thanks for coming onto the call this morning, Emma. It looks like a number of the other team are either at career days. I see Keshni is ill and Stacey's got some other important work to do. But we're going to record the meeting anyway, so they can listen in
Okay, great.
later.
Perfect.
So yeah, I think maybe just a good summary of exactly how the career path you use, just so when the consultants are talking to students and
Mm,
families, they have a little bit more information and perhaps can market it in a better way.
absolutely.
Will be useful. So I'll leave it to you.
Okay, great. So, usually when I do a career assessment, oftentimes I need to find scholastic potential is. But I'm guessing that in this case, oftentimes with the students that are coming through the program, we have a good idea of their cognitive and scholastic potential because they've had to write the SATs and so on. Am I right?
Not from the outset. So they
Okay.
generally will only take the SATs later in the process. So many of them, it'll just be an initial interest to study overseas, and all we will have is their current academic results, and that, as you
Okay.
know, will vary drastically depending on various
Hmm.
factors, including the school and the whether they're doing the IB or CAP system. If they're going to a very strong
Absolutely.
academic school or a weaker school,
Or
so
a
it
weaker one, yeah.
fluctuates
So,
quite a lot. Yeah.
okay. So I think that that's always a good starting point then is to actually find out what their cognitive and scholastic potential is.
Mm.
Including strengths and weaker areas, because obviously that's going to impact a lot on the areas that they can study in.
Yes.
Just for an example, if they're not good verbally in terms of writing and so on, we don't want to send them into a course that requires a lot of essay writing.
Mm.
We'd prefer to send them into then a more practical type of course.
Yes.
So we need to find out what their strengths and what their weaknesses are cognitively and scholastically. So that's our starting point. A very intensive interview with the students on who they are, their school background, what their interests are. So, just in terms of, we call it a clinical interview. It's not that clinical. But just in terms of a very long discussion with them about their backgrounds, their interests, so on, so that we have a good idea of who they are. Um, and, once we've done that, we're going to then move into their personality and their personality testing. And also then using, as well as their personality, we're going to look into their interest testing.
Mm.
And then we're going to take all of that, their cognitive, their scholastic, their personality, their interest, and we're going to then look at the results of all of that. And we'll write up quite an intensive report in terms of what sort of career path or study path they should be taking. Um,
I
you
see.
know, Oftentimes you can't narrow it down to a particular course.
Yes.
Um, but we can give a very good idea of, for instance, you should be doing a BSc.
Mm.
Because you find a lot of students don't really know and they have no clue. But if you give them an idea of, let's go in the direction of BSc or let's go in the direction of medicine, once they start studying, they tend to find their niche within that area because things start opening up for them once they start studying and they find their interest. Once they start being exposed to courses at a tertiary level.
I see. And then I've got a question, Emma. Obviously, sort of very topical at the moment and has been for a while now is the whole AI and how that's going to affect job
Absolutely.
prospects, and that obviously aligns with what kids should be potentially studying. How does that sort of curveball affect how we recommend career paths?
And that's a big question, you sort of in careers at the moment. And I think that's something that we have to take into account is that, we've got to prepare kids to be ready for AI. They need to be au fait with AI and to know that some jobs are actually going to become obsolete. And there are going to be certain jobs that do open up because of AI, but we've got to make sure that they are actually very au fait with AI and to realize that this is something which is very real and that some jobs that are around right now are not going to be around in the future. And that's something which we have to make them aware of. That,
okay.
the human element is going to be replaced, unfortunately.
Yes. So obviously, because with our consultants, when they're talking to families, I'm sure that's a common concern these days. If I talk to parents, as an example, are often standing on the side of a sports field or something, and there may be parents who have kids that are like 15, 16, slightly older than my older son, and they're all very concerned about, study, what's going to be the best route and that. So I think the important message for our consultants is that we are with the Career Pathway Navigator, we obviously certainly will take that into account when making recommendations for a student so that they don't study something that is like a dead-end career or is going to have no potential in the future. And I think that's the important takeaway is that, we can speak about that with confidence, because I think
Absolutely. So
that's
they're
going to be
never
common.
going to
Yeah.
be recommended something that is not going to exist.
Yes. Because I think it's a very real concern.
It might exist in a different format.
Yes.
It might exist in more of an AI format, and they may become consultants in that particular field.
Yeah.
So if that's a field they're interested in, they may become an AI consultant. They
Yes.
may be providing the research behind it for AI, but they may not actually be the person who's doing it. For just as an example, psychology is going to eventually be taken over by AI. It's a very real thing. So, looking at my role, for example, people might not be actually sitting in an office doing the therapy, but they may be providing the research to the AI who's going to be providing the therapy, if that
Yes.
makes any sense.
Yeah. I
So,
understand. Yeah.
it still exists, but in a very different format.
Okay. Now, interesting. I think it's a very interesting discussion, and certainly one that I think a lot of parents are going to be having with their kids now. So yeah, I think for our BDMs, it's just to put that, because I'm sure that is going to be a question that you get a lot, with this. So yeah, when we're selling the services, is just to let the parents and the kids know that we're well aware of it, and Emma's well aware of it, and we'll give you the best options in terms of what's a sensible career choice going forward, because nobody wants to go and study for 3 or 4 years and then find out when they're 22 there are no jobs in their career.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, I
So
could
you,
think of nothing worse than putting in all that effort and then, you're just not
yeah,
finding, I'm
and
currently actually seeing it's a young man that I actually used to teach many years ago when I was still teaching. And he has a master's degree in a particular subject and he cannot find a job. He's in his 30s now. Incredibly intelligent young man. And,
mm,
you know, the levels of anxiety and depression he has because he's in his 30s, he has a master's degree and he just cannot find a job.
yeah, yeah, it's very sad when you hear that, and I think for it's so important. You can see the importance of actually doing something where there's going to be a demand in the future, because
Mm,
otherwise all that happens is you spend all that time and money studying something, and then you end up having to go into another field and becoming and do something totally different, which isn't always a bad thing, but I mean, then why go and study that in the first place and spend who knows how much money over that time and stress that goes with it? Um, and I mean, you can't even if you can't even quantify, like if you go and study for years and years and years and don't use it. I mean, while you're studying, you're not working, you're not earning. So that compounded over a long time, I mean, your financial loss is massive. And like you say, somebody in their 30s, by that stage, they should be fairly well established in a career
mm,
field path. And to not even be able to get a job, it basically forces them to go and do something either entrepreneurial or, go into a role where they probably have no passion or desire just to earn an income. And
absolutely.
that's
That's
what
the
we want
thing.
to
I mean,
avoid, guys. That's what we want to avoid for the youngsters, is to actually encourage them to, and that's why the charge we charge in the grand scheme of things for that is actually minuscule compared to getting it wrong. It can cost
mm,
millions and millions to get it wrong. And like you say, the stress, the depression, the anxiety
mm,
that can be a cause of all of that is real. So, for a few thousand rand to hopefully help somebody make the right choice and avoid all of that, it's actually a no-brainer.
absolutely.
So
Because what you're
yeah,
going to pay in therapy further down the line when you're sitting with that, I've lost my passion, I'm depressed, I'm anxious, I'm
yes,
still living with my parents. Um, you know, what you're going to pay in therapy, just 1 month's therapy is, you know, is the cost of
exactly.
what you're going to pay.
Yeah,
So, it's actually it's like you say, it's a no-brainer.
yeah, yeah, guys. So I'd encourage, the BDMs that are going to be listening to this later, and obviously Corno's on the call now, but I encourage you all to just think about that when you're talking to these youngsters. Obviously, we're talking about overseas study, and it totally aligns with this. And just to really get to the bottom of that element, of what you're going to study and why you're going to study it, and you know um, and even often just a simple question like, have you thought about what you want to study? And many of the youngsters may say, well, I don't know, but I'm thinking of this, and that. And that's like a red flag to say, well, we've got someone to help you. We've got someone to
Mm,
really guide you. And, and then you can kind of speak about the risks of getting it wrong and the risks of doing the wrong thing.
mm,
I mean, nobody can predict the future, and I don't think there's an exact science in terms of we will get it right every time, because people do change as they get older, I think. But
absolutely.
certainly guidance, I think, is a lot of the kids need it. And I think, Emma, you mentioned once that even if they go to a school where they often have some kind of access to a educational psychologist, many of them will prefer to use an external person.
Mm.
Um, so yeah, I mean, I don't think we'll win them all, guys, in terms of getting everybody on board, but there's certainly a huge market for it, I believe.
No, I think so. And, I do think it's very beneficial because sometimes they have such a wide range. You'll have some of them saying that they want to study something in the arts, something in science, something in engineering.
Hmm.
And, obviously, it's not possible to marry all those. You have to narrow it down.
Yes. definitely. Catherine, do you have any specific questions?
Yes, I would just like to know, Emma, what is like the kind of timeline? How long does it take for you to work with a student? Does it take a week,
Hmm.
2 weeks? I mean, what kind of duration does it
So,
take to like go from
so
beginning of the
basically,
process to the end?
hmm, so 2 weeks from beginning to end. So 2 weeks from them coming, doing the testing, and getting the report back.
I
So
see.
total two
Okay.
weeks turnaround time. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Perfect. And
I
then you
think
give
that's
them a
amazing.
report at the end of it.
They'll get a verbal feedback, so there'll be an oral feedback. They'll come and we'll talk through it, and they'll also get a full comprehensive written report as well.
Right. Okay. No, perfect. That's Joe. That's the only
Yeah,
question I had
I
there.
think that's amazing, Emma, that in 14 days that we can help somebody so quickly and give them a kind of a path. Because I think that's the worst thing is the uncertainty of guessing about what I should be doing. And that also, guys, will link into making a decision on whether they're going to join our program. Because if they're uncertain about, what they're going to study, then they may just decide to delay the whole thing until they've made that decision. So yeah, within 2 weeks, Emma can guide them and give them clarity and teenagers generally don't listen to their parents, but they'll listen to somebody else that's a professional, and we can save them all that stress and uncertainty and give them a clear path and let them open that up in their minds and then make decisions going forward. So it will benefit us as well in terms of registrations of clients, and so it's a win-win for everybody. It really is. So yeah, very,
Um,
very excited about it.
just to add as well, Justin, it can be done online for those people who are not in Joburg.
Yes,
But those who are in the Joburg area, if they want to come in, then the offices are in Bryanston. So I can also do it, on site in Bryanston for those that are in Joburg as well.
perfect.
Okay,
Yeah,
cool.
that's great. I mean, I think that was one of the big things is we can actually, because we do get students from all over South Africa and we get from other African countries. So
Mm, yeah.
we can literally help a child in Botswana, for example, with all of these services, and they never have to set foot in South Africa. And it just sort of
Absolutely.
internationalizes what we do and it spreads our footprint. I mean, technically, you could help somebody in Europe who wants to study in the
Mm,
States.
yeah.
Why not? I mean, it's using technology, so it's really a great addition to our services, and I think it just dovetails perfectly.